So with total clarity, we're not quorate at the moment, and it's the time that I said it would be, but we'll give people just a couple of minutes to return to the chamber. Sorry? Well, Tom Bonet says he's so we've got definitely but actually we definitely got Deputy Reynolds.
Thank you, sir. So a very, very long time ago, Deputy Luce referenced in his remarks, referenced humour in his remarks. And I thought perhaps I could reference a subgenre, namely black humour. I came across a news report when I was preparing for this debate, and it went like this. In some angry and heated exchanges in the State's chamber, the Chief Minister was accused of presiding over a divided administration and that morale among members is at an all-time low. That's a quote from an ITV report on the 2017 vote of no confidence in Senator Gorst. It does seem that perhaps we are doomed to repeat ourselves. And I think whatever the result of this vote of no confidence, this Assembly and indeed the island will need to give some serious thought as to whether there are structural problems in the way that government is set up. However, that is not the issue before us now. So the central question in any vote of no confidence has to be forward-looking. The central question is, what is the best way forward, given all the circumstances? So my starting point has been to look at the major policy issues, questions at stake. And I say this because it is noticeable to me that what little focus there has been on this debate or in the lead up to this debate on policy. It doesn't include Reform Jersey, who oppose many of our policies, and I respect they have a different point of view, even when I disagree with them. But other than the reform, there's been no challenge to the government plan, which, let's face it, is a complete programme of government. Nothing in this debate challenges a single thing in that government plan. There is one disagreement on health, which I'll come on to. But even there, the debate has been more about the he said, she said, rather than the substance, particularly from the opponents, rather than the substance of the policy disagreement. And I mentioned this lack of focus on policy because when you think back in the UK to the big resignations over the last few decades, they were all about policy. Michael Heseltine, Nigel Lawson, Geoffrey Howe, Norman Lamont for the Conservatives, Robin Cook for Labour. These were resignations on fundamental matters of policy principle. Europe, in the case of the Conservatives, it's always Europe for the Conservatives, and the Gulf War in Robin Cook's case. Read those speeches today, and they still resonate. They feel substantial. There's no reference to personality clashes and arguments, even though we know for certain that they were happening. In all these cases as well, the public knew the issues at stake. It was, in each case, clear and profound. There were clear and profound differences of policy that were widely understood by the public at large. Can we say the same about this vote of no confidence? I don't think we can. I would suggest to members that if we took a poll of people walking around in the street, not the people who bother to contact us on social media or other means, most people would be, as the person who I met going home last night on the railway walk, who I've chatted to a couple of occasions about politics, works in the finance industry, knew there was a vote of no confidence on, but when I said, what do you think it's about, didn't really know the answer. I would say that is the overwhelming view of the island. They think This reflects the lack of clear and obviously policy divide in the public, in all the discussion about this vote. And it looks to the public like we're simply, again, ignoring the big issues. So let me talk about the health issue, which is the single area of policy disagreement that has come up. And for me, I would see this not so much in terms of the obvious clashes between the people concerned, but the future of our health service. And on this big question, this vital question, Deputy Wilson has a vision for the future of our health service that I back. And I am glad that the Chief Minister has chosen to back her Health Minister. Deputy Howell asked why the Chief Minister chose not to back her close ally, the Constable of St John. That gets to the very point I'm making. The reason is because she chose policy over personalities. When push came to shove, the Chief Minister chose progress. She chose essential modernisation. She chose not to go back, but to go forward, even at some personal cost. That is leadership. The Chief Minister has already covered, the Health Minister has already covered the aspects of the health programme that have been pushed forward and done so successfully in her time. But I do want to focus on that most important one of all, the biggest and most vital of those changes to the leadership and structure of the Health Department. The establishment of a health board, the new leadership in the department, and the turnaround team. These are massive, significant steps forward. Clinical guidelines will follow. No one has tackled health, these fundamental issues in health, before. There are those who argue that this is the wrong way to go. But these kind of management structures and clinical guidelines are common the world over. I have seen no compelling reason put forward why Jersey should opt out of these kind of governance structures. Sir, I have the highest regard for the Constable of St John, but on the question of health, I profoundly disagree with him. Anyone who read the Massey-Taylor report will see that we have long-standing, deep-seated problems in HCS. There is a culture, not uniform, but widespread, that is resistant to modern governments and determined to oppose these changes. This Health Minister has taken steps to change this. I am profoundly grateful to Professor Massey-Taylor for the work he has done for the island, as I am to the turnaround team. They cost money, but I do not regard the cost as disproportionate in relation to their skills and the problems, the deep-seated problems we are trying to solve. These major changes have been led by a determined, resilient and committed Health Minister, and I applaud her for it, and I applaud the Chief Minister for backing her Health Minister. On the question of the Commissioner for Standards report, which is being held against her, Deputy Wilson has acknowledged she made a mistake. She's made an apology. If the offence merited greater punishment, the Commissioner would have said so. It is not, in my view, the intention of Commissioner judgments that they should act as a dead weight on ministers, which they have to carry around for the rest of their time in office. They are to be learnt from, so that everyone can move forward. I see a Health Minister who has shown incredible dedication and commitment to a change programme that represents one of the great challenges in Jersey politics. She has met that challenge in the face of considerable opposition with resilience and fortitude, and I admire her for it. Ministers have spoken about what they have achieved, and I should perhaps say a few words about the environment and planning portfolio. This is one of those areas where it's really difficult to get from the impressions that people have to the actual reality. And I'll reference something that the Constable of St. Peter said to make that point. He said that he was disappointed that the supplementary planning guidance on planning on density standards hadn't come forward. But it has. It was released months ago. after consultation. Supplementary planning guidance has come through slower than we would have ideally liked. We have had staffing challenges in that department. But the team have worked very, very hard to get it out, and we do now have all the supplementary planning guidance relevant to the rezoned housing sites in place. It's fine to be frustrated about the inadequate sewage infrastructure, but I find this perplexing that this is a factor in the vote of no confidence, given that the Chief Minister has pushed repeatedly for progress in this area, and it is being addressed. We have inherited a bad situation, taken long-term decisions to fix it. The tree law. Of course, this has been controversial. I note that it was voted for with only one dissent in the last assembly. I assume that the Constable was one of those who voted for it. The Constable of St. Peter was one of those who voted for it. So I was carrying the instructions of the previous assembly forward. I got it wrong in the first instance, and I admitted it, and I apologised. Since then, I brought forward new proposals, but they do not include, in fact, they specifically excluded work in gardens to make small-scale maintenance work. Again, this gap between the allegations that are made, the perception, and the actual situation. But in any case, I have withdrawn all proposals and made it very clear that I have no intention of bringing forward new proposals. We may end up talking more about that in a later debate. But I've made it very clear that the situation is clearly different. I recognise that, particularly because of Storm Ciarán, but also because of other factors, and I will not be carrying forward those proposals. So again, this gap between perception and reality. So I do recognise that islanders have concerns about the performance of planning services. And of course, I commissioned the McKinnon report to push forward that agenda. And I want to say very clearly, I believe in that agenda. I am committed to that agenda. I'm committed to the improvement of planning services. And there is some progress. We had a waiting list of over 150 planning applications awaiting just to get validated 6 months ago. And that was down just before Christmas to 1. Housing approvals are up, even if you discount Les Sablons. There's something of a lagging indicator, I think, here. It takes a while for perception to catch up with reality. But I'm not pretending that everything is perfect in planning. There is still a lot of work to do. And I want to look at various things. I want to look at work that can be done without requiring planning permission. Can we exclude more work in that area? Permitted development. We're going to review building bylaws. I'm committed to continuous improvement. I will always defend the independence of the planning decision-making process. But planning policy is something which we can all work on. Government, assembly, people, to make it work for the island, for business, and for the public. I don't think it's fair to say that we're sidelining the assembly. I've brought myself a number of items of legislation to this assembly from the food law, which had been stuck or been in process, shall we say, for 10 years, I think. Secondary legislation on that is coming through shortly. It's coming through shortly. The replacement vessel policy, the regulations, which caused so much light and fury at the time, but have actually settled in brilliantly and mean that we have now, to a significant extent, defused the fishing disputes with the French. Licensing of rented dwellings, conservation areas, and so on. These have all been brought to this assembly, and there's more coming. Big, significant pieces of work involving this assembly. We have brought through the wind farm proposals, a huge piece of work for this whole island. The Marine Spatial Plan will be brought to this assembly. These are big, bold, ambitious pieces of work. They will work for the long-term future, and they tie up our environmental ambitions with our economic success. Of course, we have disagreements. My aim is to work through problems. There is or should be a very high bar to changing a government in mid-term. Therefore, my approach is to try and find ways forward, finding a way through, as the Chief Minister put it. That is what I do. That is why we talk through our differences. That is what this government is about. So, in summary, on the one policy area mentioned in the proposition, the future of health, the Chief Minister made the right decision, even though it was difficult for her personally, and I applaud her for it. In terms of disagreements, I've had my differences with the Chief Minister, but so what? The point is, I agree with the strategic priorities of this government. The disagreements, where they occur, are generally about how we get there. When you have disagreements, what you need to know is, can you resolve them? I find that I can. One never wants a vote of no confidence, but if one good thing comes out of it, it will be that it has made us reflect on our relations, on our relations with each other, making better use of the collective talents as a ministerial team and of this assembly. I commit to my own part in that, and I hope I never stop learning. We have a functioning government. It is delivering. The Chief Minister has the support of her ministers. There are concrete plans in place for the future. We're just getting into our stride. We can be better, and we will. And I hope the Assembly will give us the opportunity to do so. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Colin Tarbison John.
Thank you, sir. Sir, today is the first time in my life that I've been accused of having a lack of commitment to Jersey. So be it, sir. Sir, I'm sure that I am, like many, finding myself between a rock and a hard place, although I am pleased that I've been able to help my colleague, the Constable of St Helier, and I would endorse his words about the quality of the staff that he's found in Broad Street. So in considering the proposal, I've been reminded of two very important pieces of advice that I received during my career. Firstly, an excellent piece of advice I was given as a young union representative, and that was never defend the indefensible. The reason for this, sir, is on the occasion that you have a genuine case where the benefit of the doubt should be given, if you've already used your credit up, your genuine case may not have the chance they deserve. So in referring to the proposal, Deputy Binney refers to my own resignation. Sir, a decision I did not take lightly. It was an incredibly tough decision for me to make. However, I wouldn't be seen to be the person that cried wolf. I said in May what my actions would be if the interim chair's contract was extended by a day, sir. So, P19 2023 had a budget of £14,400 per month for the interim chair, and to the end of October, the average monthly cost was £22,985. Look at another way, sir, a 59.6% overspend. £230,000 spent on one individual part-timer as opposed to the agreed £140,000. I repeatedly told the Chief Minister and other ministers how unacceptable this was, especially at a time when we had promised better oversight of expenditure. So I won't talk about the Commissioner's report. I accept the comments of the Health Minister that she's made earlier this afternoon. So in terms of why there had been an extension to the interim chair to the end of December, I wrote to the Chief Minister, and the response I received on the 3rd of January was, the papers for the 6th of December board meeting had been published and the meeting could not be cancelled with just over a week to go. Well, let's look at this in detail. The announcement to extend the interim chair was made on the 23rd of November. The same day I informed the Chief Minister that I would be resigning, albeit, just like Deputy Stevenson, I took the courtesy of waiting for the Chief Minister to return to the island and handed my letter on the 25th of November. The board pack was actually circulated on the 29th of December. The papers weren't published until, I believe, the 4th of December. Look at another way, sir. The board papers had not been published or distributed before the extension was made. How many members realise that the contract was up to 130 hours at £180 an hour? Not for the 4 weeks that was mentioned earlier, but for 5.5 weeks. Sir, I support a board structure. I said that in the original debate. I'm very familiar with board governance, and I support a board structure. What I did not support, sir, was the choreographed scenario where the chair was going to be recruited after the board had been recruited. So, sir, the Assembly that passed P19 2023 with a requirement for the chair to work 48 days a year, members will be interested to know that the advert for the post had a requirement for 3 days a week. That doesn't come up to 48 days. Interviews are not scheduled to take place until the 22nd and 23rd of January. The next board meeting scheduled is the 25th of January, so the papers will be due to be distributed before the interviews actually take place. That's 225 days or 32 weeks since this Assembly agreed the post and the time for the interviews. Sir, I said what would happen at the debate, and it actually happened. I have no issue with the qualifications of the person carrying out that post. I have no issue with the day rate that person is paid. It is the sheer volume of days that an interim chair has been paid for that I have issue with. So I was more than happy to defend the Our Stars Awards and would do so again, as I see that as an investment in all of our staff. I was delighted that the HR team won a national award, but I was totally unaware of the cost. And the government have defended that expenditure rather than acknowledging the excellent work of the team and the committing to look at preventing a repeat in terms of cost in the future. And we heard that repeated again during questions. I'd have liked an assurance that it won't happen again. Sir, the second piece of advice I'd like to refer to is something I have also used many times, and advice I've shared with many over the years. I normally use a coffee cup for this, sir. So the piece of advice was given to me when I was a senior manager having to deal with significant change. And I think it's something relevant to this debate today. I'd like to share it with members. So when faced with a difficult decision involving an individual, you should always concentrate on the facts. It's important in these circumstances to remove the emotion. Move the emotion, put the individual concern to one side. Having done that, look at the facts in front of you. I'd urge members to do this today. There is no question in my mind that the Chief Minister is a good person and is someone who has put her heart and soul into the job, working incredibly long hours, and as mentioned earlier, done a great job in presenting the island and the government in times of trouble. But, sir, we aren't being asked about this. We are being asked if we have confidence in the Chief Minister's leadership and her judgment. Sir, we need strong leadership and good judgment. This is the issue for me. The Chief Minister's judgment has at times been sadly lacking. Sir, the full government plan debate held as recently as December was followed up 29 days later with an announcement at a lunch that there will be £30 million less expenditure as the Council of Ministers have agreed to reduce the number of public sector projects. No details whatsoever. So I'd respectfully suggest that this is the forum for such announcements, and the public, in my experience, are far more concerned about repeated revenue expenditure than they are about capital expenditure. In fact, we heard this morning in questions without notice the importance of investing in our infrastructure. During the same speech, the Chief Minister spoke about education and the ongoing dispute. Interestingly, there was no mention of the letter referred to today that was being sent to teachers on the same day. On the contrary, there was a commitment to carry on working with the trade unions, and in the speech that was published not once but twice, there was no mention of the current pay dispute at all with teachers. Strange for it to be added at the last minute when this is one of the major issues we currently face. On Friday, watching the CSSP interview 2 trade unions, they acknowledged the progress that has been made with partnership working in the last 18 months. I wonder what they would have said if they had been aware of the letter to their colleagues before that hearing. Recognising there's more work to do, sir, I would say there's an awful lot more work to do now. Yes, we need to resolve the pay dispute, but we have to take the trade unions and our employees with us. So I'm also frustrated, like others, that we haven't reduced the amount of resource in some areas, but instead we continue to recruit to areas with few vacancies and expect colleagues to cover in other areas rather than really prioritising. The decision to scrap the removal of GST from period products was something that I also found difficult. Having supported the then Senator's original proposal, I still failed to see the logic in the change of mind, and I reluctantly voted with the Council of Ministers on this. ALOs and government-owned entities we've heard about as well, and a review. And the Chief Minister says we need to do more, because we've seen double-digit increases from many of those. So when you are the leader, that is the time that you can take action. We need to be firmer with these organisations and get the benefits of collaboration from them, working more closely together sooner rather than later. The public, sir, not just Saint-Jean's, I meet, but the general public right across the island, from right across the age groups, the public want us, their politicians, to deliver value for money. So we heard from the Health Minister, sir. The only criticism I've had of the Health Minister is the cost of the interim chair for the Health Board. I have done everything I could possibly do, sir, to get a turnaround team in place, working with the Chief Minister and the Health Minister. So I used to be invited to meetings, but I got stopped being invited to those, and you'll have to ask someone else why that was. But I did everything, sir. Samurai, we heard about moving. I worked tirelessly with the former Senator Pallett to get Samurai back open. Enid Keno, that was a decision of the previous government and our previous Infrastructure Minister, Deputy Binet, who put in a longer-term structure for that. So I've spoken to a few members of the Council of Ministers who've called me about this debate. I spoke to Deputy Binet on Sunday morning to confirm my support. I have not called or canvassed any member over this debate. In fact, as recently as the 29th of December, I tried to encourage Deputy Binet not to throw in the towel. Both the Chief Minister and Deputy Chief Minister came to see me, the Deputy Chief Minister taking advantage of my weekly surgery last Wednesday evening. Interesting, both suggested that they had been told that I was running the campaign for Deputy Binet. I don't believe that there has been a campaign run by or for Deputy Binet. And, sir, the two deputies really should know better. If I was actually running a campaign, it would be a damn good one.
You mean it would be a rather good one?
Rather good one, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, rather good. Rather good. I know it would be good, sir. Sir, the final deciding factor for my decision was when the External Relations Minister and now Assistant Health Minister approached myself and my wife whilst we were in town last Thursday afternoon. Whilst I won't share the details of the conversation, I knew that sadly I could no longer support the Chief Minister's judgment. Reading the media yesterday, it was suggested that the Chief Minister may have done enough at the Chamber lunch to convince businesses. Well, sir, that certainly wasn't the case from the feedback I have received, as one attendee wrote to me on Sunday. Just seen your announcement, a hard decision, but the right one in my view, especially based on comments at the Chamber lunch. We need a strong leader for the next few years. Sir, perhaps the comments from Chamber are code for we also aren't happy, but we're unlikely to have the same amount of influence over a different Chief Minister. Sir, I can assure members the most written communication I've had about the need for change has actually come from business leaders, owners, chairmen, directors of companies, as well as the men and women in the street. Sir, forming a Council of Ministers is like any other team, sir. You have your storming, forming, norming, and performing. Sir, it seems to me that some people didn't move away from the first two. Unfortunately, we didn't get to performing in some areas. So in regards to the former Chief Executive, what is true is that the Chief Minister made it no secret that she wasn't happy to inherit someone else's appointment in the early days. I used to attend weekly meetings of the Chief Executive and the Chief Minister, and I've described the relationship as professional. So I offered the Chief Minister to do exactly what I did for her with the former CEO, to do that with the Infrastructure Minister, and sadly that wasn't taken up. So this government, we've experienced more U-turns and handbrake turns than the Jersey Rally. I asked members to look at the facts, focus on the question, put personalities to one side and vote poor. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. It's not often that I rise not quite lost for words. But I want to start from a different perspective, sir. And that is just for a couple of moments for us in the Assembly, not to focus on the debate in front of us, but to focus on where we find ourselves as an island community in the wider world. We may have long forgotten COVID, although those in hospitals now suffering from COVID haven't long forgotten it, but we were also reminded of it in that the last time we had a vote of no confidence in this Assembly, it was during the middle, or I think maybe towards the end, I'm not sure, but COVID was still very prevalent in our community, and we still had special measures in place. And it was then that we had a debate about a vote of no confidence. Whether we liked or not, we are in a what's called a post-COVID world, but the interventions that not only the government of Jersey, but governments across the world had to place on citizens is continuing to have a wide-ranging health and economic effect upon islanders as it is across the rest of the world. Upon, or added to those difficulties then, we also have the continuing and ongoing war in Ukraine, which is affecting food prices. And we are now, in recent days, since the 7th of October last year, seeing the crisis in the Middle East, and we have started over the last few weeks to see the effect on the global supply chain more widely. All of these events are having a detrimental effect upon our economy and, unfortunately, upon inflation in our community and upon what islanders feel is the pound in their pocket. And it is important, sir, I think, that we remind ourselves of the global context within which this decision and the government is working. So I've myself been the subject of a vote of no confidence. I hope it's not a coincidence that I follow the current Constable of St John's speech, but the vote of no confidence in my leadership was brought by a previous Constable of St John. And I'm not sure I look back with fondness, sir, but if I give you a part of that vote of no confidence and the opening speech that I'm not quite sure why, maybe it's because I do like a tipple, that sticks in my mind, was the phrase that myself and the government of the day was unable to organise a drinking party in a brewery. He was mindful of standing orders. And then went on to say why that was the case. And in his view, it was the case because he had been speaking to someone in France, no difficulty with that, sir, and that someone in France had told him on good authority that a hospital could be built in Jersey for £90 million. And this was well evidenced. The person that was speaking to him had good experience, and therefore that was reason to vote out the government of the day. The rest, as we say, is history. That particular individual became a part of the future government after the election and led for a period the hospital project under the previous government. And I'll be careful what I say, sir, but somehow that 90 million, almost like a miracle of biblical proportion, ended up being not 90 million, but 1.1 billion. So, sir, we have to think very carefully about our actions. It's fair to say in that vote of no confidence, there was also a great element of personalities. The last vote of no confidence in the Chief Minister that I spoke in, I spoke almost in the entirety of my 15 minutes, and I've already been going for 5, about Brexit and the need for continuity in order to deal with the position that a decision that those electors in the United Kingdom had placed the island in by voting to leave the European Union, and then making sure that we got the TECA sorted out. It was a speech, really, if I may use this phrase, although it's been slightly spoilt by our friends across the water. It was a speech about putting Jersey first. And I make no apology for talking about putting Jersey first, because I think in each member's heart of hearts, there is a desire that they put Jersey first, and that is why they were elected to this assembly. And why, as Deputy Jeune said, politics takes our mind, our soul, and our bodies to do it well. As the Chief Minister said, being Chief Minister is a privilege, but it is not one that should be taken lightly, and it is not one that is easy. Won't surprise you, sir, because I've spoken about it many times in this assembly. I am only too conscious of the things that I got wrong during my term as Chief Minister. And if we were to amalgamate every desire that members have articulated in every speech that they have made today, the views expressed, the actions that they wish to see achieved, I don't think that is a possibility for any Chief Minister to be able to deliver. We can't and we shouldn't seek to do everything all at once. And I'm also grateful that the Constable of St John kindly highlighted a number of the Chief Minister's skills that she brings to the job of Chief Minister, and how she has led the island through those really tragic situations that we experienced and had to be dealt with. So one of the foundations of the island's economic success is political stability. I think this is why there should be and ought to be a recognition of why every other vote of no confidence in a Chief Minister has never been successful. Once an Assembly has voted to remove a Chief Minister and therefore a government, it will, in my mind, become easier to do so for a second time. And that will not be and cannot be a good thing for our island's either political stability or wider economic and social stability. And so I'd urge those members who are wavering, I think there's probably only one or two still wavering, sir, looking at things that members have said, I would urge them to think very, very carefully before casting their vote this evening, and be mindful of that stability which has been long fought for, long argued for, but once gone I fear will take time to rebuild. Moreover, solving the issues that members have raised and spoken about today, we have to ask ourselves just how difficult, whether that's possible, to bring all of the strands of thought, all of the desires together, simply by changing the Chief Minister and the government. Because I fear that rather than dealing with all of those issues, what might happen and what we might lead to is really a very difficult place for members and for this assembly. So I'm a team player. I stick with the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers. I believe in consensus and compromise. I believe that that has served our island well for decades. I'm not a supporter of party politics as the solution to all of our problems. Perhaps there are changes to the machinery of government which can help, and I, for one, have heard those articulated eloquently this afternoon. But we must think carefully about before we make our decision today. And I ask members to do so, to think very carefully before they cast a vote which will bring down not only the Chief Minister, but the entire Council of Ministers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. So I have served in 7 governments, all governments apart from the last one since '99. Like many members who have served in public life, one has to take responsibilities, and one learns that when you make decisions, you have to take people with you, and you have to require consensus. This island is unique. We are a minority government, of which this States Assembly is always in the decision-making role. And I have been through numerous votes of no confidence, some in myself, sir, some in all the Chief Ministers. And I have also been part of votes of no confidence where a vote of no confidence, as the last speaker, then the Senator Gorst, it was a proxy about another member. It feels like Groundhog Day, sir. The arguments were the same. There was an unhappiness of a constable of St John, incensed by a Chief Minister who had displayed a lack of leadership in the reappointment of a member. I won't go into any of the personalities, but members know exactly what I am saying. But it tipped over into personality politics. That was the undertone of it. I voted in favour of the Chief Minister because I thought it was the right thing to do. It was not about personalities. It should never be about personalities. It should be about doing the right thing for Jersey. There was a vote of no confidence in the former Chief Minister than that, former Senator Lesueur. I've looked at that vote of no confidence, and the reasons were about a fundamental spending review cuts that were being necessary in order to balance our budgets because of an issue of a world in crisis where we had to cut back on expenditure. That's something that a number of members have advanced. That's something that I know Deputy Binet advances, Deputy Scott advanced, and the Chief Minister is criticised in trying to make reductions in expenditure in the face of economic turmoil around the world, where there is real concern. And as External Relations Minister, I know about that concern. And about money, if I may very delicately say, there is clearly a difference of opinion. That's absolutely fine. The Constable of St John believes there is an issue about the chairman of the board of the health authority, the health board. I haven't been around for a lot of the debates about that, sir, but I would just make 3 points, if I may. Health's budget is £249 million. There are overspends of 30 million. Everybody knows it's not about the amount of money, it is how it is spent. There is a governance board put in place. That governance board, I don't think, has had a single criticism about its work when it has been sitting. In fact, I hear from GPs, consultants, nurses, and everybody that they are saying, at last, we are holding account and having accountability and governance in our hospital, which is at the heart, maybe, of the reasons why there is the overspend in the hospital. I sit next to the Health Minister in both this Assembly and the Council of Ministers. And I can't help but just try and understand, if I may, the issue about the chair of the board of £225,000. It's all about trying to deal with the overspend of 30 million, but bigger than that, it's about the proper spending of £249 million in delivering services to islanders, which have not been delivered properly. There has been waiting lists. Members know that I was ill last year. I was ill. Not because of death, but I had an issue. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. I wouldn't have that waiting list now because they've been dealt with. Now, I just do not understand, sir, the proportionality. And I would ask members to consider the arguments of 225,000, which the constable may be entitled to have. But I'm next to the Health Minister at the Council of Ministers, and I've been a former Treasury Minister, and I've argued with lots of ministers about spending, and it's about value for money, proper spending, getting the right results. And what I've heard here from my neighbour is results in terms of the hospital. It's been years of difficulty. It was about votes of no confidence in the last 2 chief ministers about value for money and spending. Sir, a number of members have said that teams form, they storm, and then they norm. I've been part of a number of teams, and I struggle. When sometimes friendships come involved. The definition of successful people is described as a constant struggle about the belief that you can succeed and the knowledge that you can fail. We are all in that camp when we are making decisions. We struggle in the belief that you can and you cannot. But one is not always right. Nobody has the monopoly on what is right or wrong, and it requires discussion and consensus, as the last speaker has spoken about. And in being friends with a number of members, including the mover of this proposition and the person that this is against, I put friendships aside, and I want to always deal with what is issues as of professionalism. So a number of members have asked why I was wearing, together with 2 other members, a pin badge which has got Jersey in France on it. I must confess, sir, I've not gone away from being British Jersey in terms of my external relations role. It's actually the pin badge that I was wearing as being the first witness at a wedding in Rwanda over the weekend, which I attended. I went to Rwanda first as a member of the Francophonie in 2012, and I've been there lots of times since, and I've shown that I can go and to and from back. And in my remarks in that speech, I quoted Nelson Mandela. When people are determined, they can overcome anything. It's about working together. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. And a winner is certainly somebody that needs a good head. Nelson Mandela said, a good head and a good heart are a formidable combination. A winner never loses. They either win or learn. They don't lose. And Nelson Mandela said, it is always impossible until it is done. And, sir, I know that members are going to be shortly voting on a vote of no confidence. And I'm really digging deep and asking myself, what is the reason, apart from this issue which has been raised by the Constable of St John about the Health Minister? We haven't had a vote of no confidence in the Health Minister. If there was one that was necessary, it hasn't happened. I have confidence in the Health Minister. I've agreed to be an Assistant Minister. I wouldn't have done that unless I'd done my due diligence about what was been going on in health. I've worked with health for years about the problem we haven't had a hospital. I wish we'd have had that hospital. It would have been built by now, just like the police station. But that was an issue, that was a challenge. All capital projects are a big problem. I've dealt with the incinerator. I haven't, it's actually states members that have made decisions about them. But it's about consensus and bringing people together. And I must say that I just would ask members to reflect on what has been said about the communications between the client. The Health Minister is the client of the hospital. The Treasury Minister sets the biscuit tin, the amount of money available, and the Planning Minister is responsible for the policies, but they don't make the decision. So this island is a rock of stability. I've been reading the late, great Colin Powell's book. Fantastic that he wrote it. And I've quoted it before in the States Assembly. And it says about the success of the island has always been about seizing opportunities that are actually not in the island's hands, but they're opportunities that are, and challenges that are outside, that are brought from outside. We need to trade, but we need to demonstrate consistency, stability and certainty, and fairness. Jersey is trusted. It's one of our fundamental principles. Our trust industry is the most important, and you, sir, in your dual role, will be overseeing a court service, will make decisions on trust. And we are a leading jurisdiction in the world on trusts, and trust is everything. And I ask myself, has the Chief Minister fallen short to such an extent that deserves a vote of no confidence on the evidence that we have received and that we have heard? I can't, and those members who are members of the State's Employment Board, the subject of one of those those votes of no confidence previously, they are being criticised, and they are members of the State's Employment Board who are in the firing line by a block vote, which I totally respect, that's the reasons, but the facts are Reform have made their decision in order because they are incensed. That was the tipping point about the teacher's letter because of SEB. The members that are both part of the executive and non-executive are part of that. And I just don't understand. And I don't understand what is, in the summing up of the Chief Minister, she'll talk about her record of service and her record of delivery and what this Council of Ministers is capable of doing. It is capable of a lot. It is capable of delivery in a way that I've not really seen Council of Ministers before capable of being on the point of delivery. Delivery on massive issues that have been around for so long about the hospital. We had that meeting last week in the police station. It's the first time I've been in there. What a fantastic building. I wish we'd have gotten on with the hospital then. Putting a decision off is a decision that is almost invariably gets worse. And too many decisions have been put off. I'm not going to speak for much any longer. We need to get on and make a decision. But I know that this island requires decisions, properly made decisions, honest decisions, honourable decisions, proper decisions, and decisions made with transparency and not about personalities and not about just the minutiae. Looking after the pennies is about looking after the pounds and about the way that we do public expenditure. And I ask members to reflect on the proportionality of the issues that the Constable Job raises. The pennies matter, but it's about the pounds, and it's about whether or not those members that are thinking, what is the reason why they are going to vote in favour? Because we've heard that lack of leadership before. I don't think the Chief Minister is a lack of leadership. It is an issue when you are trying to lead a team, but when you have somebody and you have members who are actually quite difficult, and it's always the case, but when you have somebody that breaks the bat of the team captain out repeatedly and tripwires are put under, it is difficult. I'm not saying that's always happened, but it just seems to me that that is one of the underlying issues. It's been an issue for many years, and it's been an issue. And if it is the issue, I regret that very much. I have confidence in our Chief Minister. I have confidence in the Health Minister because of what I've heard. I have confidence in the Environment Minister and all the other ministers that I see. Do they make mistakes? Yes, they do. We all do. Because if you want to make decisions, you make mistakes. But it's about honesty, correcting them at once, which is what has happened. And I want to carry on serving. We'll want to carry on serving, but we want to deliver for Jersey. And delivering in Jersey, and I just ask members, what is going to be the message? It's not a threat, but what is going to be the proportionate message sent out about the reasons justifying a vote of no confidence, which will come down to a why. If members are not sure, they should abstain. If they're absolutely sure, they should vote in favour, of course. And if they're wanting to say absolutely no, the Chief Minister has absolutely failed in the vote of confidence, they should vote in favour of the proposition. But I look forward to hearing the two summings up, because it's going to come down to those. Is it really the issue that we're going to throw out? It's not just the Chief Minister, it's the whole government. It's the whole government. But it's led by a Chief Minister, and is the reason why that the Chief Minister has failed to such an extent that she deserves a vote of no confidence. If members are, it's like that. It's absolutely serious. Is it enough to basically mean that the vote of no confidence has got to succeed and the government of the island will fall? And there will be massive consequences for that. We'll repair it, of course, but there will be huge confidence issues about that following. And I just ask members to reflect on that. The monumental decision that we're about to be taken, it will repair in time, but it will be a massive decision. And it is a big decision we're just about to have to take. And I ask members to search in their souls about the reasons and the proportionality and the materiality and the underlying reasons. They know what they are. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start by aligning myself with the comments of Deputy Mezakarian, Deputy and the Constable of St John's about the enormous pressure that is put upon those of us who put ourselves forward, not only to serve in this Assembly, but to serve in the government and as a Chief Minister. And I recognise that in our Chief Minister. And it is never easy, and it is a difficult task, and I acknowledge that. Nobody expects leaders to be perfect when what they ask and deserve is leadership, honesty and integrity. And these are important times. We have considerable challenges, and it is our duty as an Assembly to ensure that we have the right leadership in place. The public deserve to have a leader they can trust, and a leader who will be clear, decisive and honest with them. The Chief Minister could claim that changing leader is wrong, as many members have. But what if that change could deliver better leadership, better decision making and a stronger recovery? This is about principles, values and performance. As states members, we have to ask ourselves whether we, as island representatives, are allowing our island to be well governed or not. This is about accountability, transparency, integrity, openness, honesty, objectivity, selflessness, and leadership, sir, the Nolan principles. In fact, if we were to avoid these issues and put them off, there would be a much worse message to the public and to the world that we prefer to turn a blind eye, and that, sir, in the eyes of some correspondents, suggests soft corruption. Members may be surprised to learn that those are not my words. Those, sir, were the words of the then Senator Moore, taken from Hansard of her opening speech, the vote of no confidence against the former Chief Minister on the 10th of November 2020. And how disappointing and how ironic that we are here today with the very same concerns. We started this term, sir, with hope, and we were promised a better way. We subscribed to that promise in good faith, sir. I myself was pleased to sign the nomination paper of the Chief Minister because I looked upon it, sir, notwithstanding what had gone before, as an opportunity for a fresh start. Upon election by this Assembly, the Chief Minister was entrusted with the responsibility of steering our island back towards prosperity after difficult times, fostering unity and safeguarding the well-being of its residents. Unfortunately, it has become increasingly evident that these obligations and many more have not been met. There has been, sir, I'm sorry to say, a litany of errors and poor judgment from the very beginning. Most notable was perhaps the loss of another chief executive officer under questionable circumstances, which makes it much harder to attract the quality candidates this island so desperately needs to reshape and lead a now somewhat demoralised civil service. And this brings ramifications. The government has been far less productive than many other governments before, lodging at least 40% less propositions in its first 18 months than the previous government. It feels like, sir, and I'm not pleased to be saying this, but it feels like there is some sort of retribution at play. Just about everything possible connected to the previous government has been erased, sir, or attempted to be erased. We see important projects cancelled at great financial cost without due democratic process. And I am not just talking about the hospital, sir. And although Deputy Binet and I do not agree on all aspects of his plans, at least he has been getting on with it, or trying to get on with it, sir, whilst we learn, being told by the Chief Minister to suppress or not divulge the true costs, sir. As a leader of the previous scrutiny function, she rightly demanded, sir, that all costs of the previous project were made public, which of course they were. And not only that, sir, at every step of the way, the previous government came to this assembly for approval. We see, sir, I'm afraid, double standards in this. We see double standards in other areas, sir. Travel choices, travel costs being one. The erosion of public trust is another significant factor contributing to this debate. The people of Jersey deserve leaders who are not only capable, but also ethical in their conduct and their approach. And I'm not accusing the Chief Minister, sir, of being unethical in any way, shape or form. But I do believe that she has allowed standards to drop amongst some of her ministers. And recent incidents of misconduct and behavioural lapses identified by the Commissioner for Standards, sir, have, I believe, regrettably cast a shadow over the credibility of our government and, to some extent, this Assembly, further undermining the trust we ask islanders to place in us as their elected officials. Her management style has openly criticised an assistant minister, sir, and we've heard from that assistant minister. We understand that an apology has been accepted, and credit to the Chief Minister for acknowledging that. It's not helpful to criticise ministers in public, sir, because their decisions do not align with yours, and it does not build a unified team or confidence amongst the population or our external partners, sir. I wasn't going to mention experience, but I think it's important too, because Deputy Jeanne did mention her incredible experience in a former life, sir. And we all come here as experienced citizens, business people, professionals in one way or another. And I think there is an array of talent in this assembly. But politics, sir, is a great leveller. This assembly is a great leveller. We all are equal in here. And there's nothing that can make up for political experience. Those of us that have been here a long time never stop learning, sir. And I have myself found that out by being on the backbenches for the last 18 months, sir, a time that I've thoroughly enjoyed working for the first time in scrutiny, for example. In only 18 months of government, was 3, it's now 4, sir, I'm afraid to say, ministers have resigned. The government's mantra for openness and transparency has been shown to be largely empty words, sir. We see a PR-led government that appears to be more interested in image, self-interest and self-promotion rather than delivering the policies we need so urgently to help islanders in these hugely challenging times. We are not looking after our own. The sudden presentation of the vote of no confidence appeared to catch the government somewhat off balance, sir. This, I believe, led to a swift reorganisation of the deck chairs. New promises were made, new deals done, new key priorities created, money found. In her speech to the Chamber of Commerce last Thursday, the Chief Minister announced 5 priorities for the government this year, all very laudable. Who could disagree with them? And great news, they have found a potential saving of £30 million. All of this was announced just 4 weeks after we spent the best part of a week debating the government plan. The government plan approved by this Assembly contains 7 priorities for the year ahead. The impromptu chamber speech reduced that to 5 and excluded environment altogether. If we had known prior to debating the government plan in December that there was an additional 30 million to be reprioritised, members could and should have had a say in how this was achieved. That could have impacted on many amendments that were rejected or many other amendments that could have been tabled. This is not, sir, I'm afraid to say, the first time the government has shown discourtesy to this Assembly. We have learnt that the Chief Minister recently agreed to split the ministerial roles of planning and the environment, which I think is actually a sensible idea. Shortly before the vote of no confidence was tabled, I understand she offered the position of planning minister to the Constable of St. Peter, who duly accepted. Not long after that, sir, the planning and environment minister, and I believe assistant minister, and I believe, sir, 3 other ministers found out and were not too pleased. I understand ultimatums were given, and it was agreed that Deputy Renouf, I believe the assistant minister, would remain in office, keeping their existing ministerial roles of planning and environment. I doubt that the public interest played any part in this decision-making process. It was just, sir, political bargaining to avoid the possibility of further resignations, which could have seriously jeopardised the outcome of this debate for the Chief Minister. And if the Chief Minister wins the vote today, sir, by anything other than a strong margin, her leadership will have been severely compromised. How can she possibly lead, having become a hostage to fortune in this way? This is not the way to run our island. There is never, sir, a good time for a vote of no confidence. There's always challenging global events and a very challenging and busy domestic agenda. But having this, sir, is an essential part of our democratic process. Otherwise, we could never remove a government. And there's nothing wrong in removing a government from office, sir, for the right reasons. But some members have expressed concern about what comes next if this vote was to succeed. And I want to ask members, sir, to think about what brought us all together, to think about why we are here both as an assembly and as individuals, to remember what motivated each and every one of us to seek re-election. We can create a better team out of our 49 members. We can elect a more competent government. We can deliver stronger leadership, sir. Importantly, if we do support this vote of no confidence, we must start with a clean slate, a blank sheet of paper, without any thoughts of revenge or retribution. Put all of this behind us, sir, and move forward. Start again. do it better. In conclusion, sir, I urge members to express their collective support in this no confidence vote. The challenges we face require steadfast and capable leadership, and it is evident that a change is necessary for the betterment of the island. A successful vote today, sir, will deliver improved accountability, improved transparency, and a renewed commitment to the well-being of Jersey and its people, sir. Our island deserves nothing less.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. I think it is very unfortunate that we find ourselves here today, 19 months in office, and we are debating a vote of no confidence in the Chief Minister. Now, I think a vote of no confidence ought to be brought forward for a very good reason. Now, as a politician, and especially being a non-executive member, I've looked at this objectively. And when I saw Deputy Tom Binney's report come through, I read through the report and I was looking through it and I thought, well, where is the compelling evidence to suggest that the Chief Minister should face a vote of no confidence? And I was starting to question, will there potentially be more that will be revealed during the debate? And I was hearing from a couple of people that that would potentially be the case. Now, I know it has maybe been elaborated upon, where there's been a couple of details that have been alluded to that I was unaware of previously, sir. But I think it's a big deal to see, for the first time in our ministerial government, the reconstitution, essentially, of the executive, because that's essentially what's going to happen, and then the non-executive would essentially be formed after that as well. Now, as much as I've maybe disagreed politically with the Chief Minister and the rest of the Council of Ministers, to the extent I voted against the government plan, I also happen to respect democracy. And I think we should all be entitled to have an array of views. We should be able to respect one another. And I happen to respect the executive and my fellow non-executive members. Now, I don't think it should be that we as a 49, as a collective, sir, have to see 4 signatories lodge a vote of no confidence when there was no dialogue among the rest of the Assembly, where potentially we could have had a meeting as a collective to discuss maybe what is not working properly, what could we do as a collective to improve things. Now, I know there's been quite a lot of emphasis towards the executive not maybe bringing forward enough proposals before the Assembly. I think that was something that the Conotable of St Martin mentioned during her speech, and a couple of times she's had to defend her position in that respect. But all 49 of us are accountable. All 49 of us have a responsibility to be delivering on behalf of our constituents. And I have to say, being a non-executive member, at times, I have really felt quite isolated. And I feel that the non-executive in itself is not actually doing the job it's supposed to be doing to enforce the executive when it's necessary. And that's maybe due to the divide we have in the Assembly. So certain things have maybe happened with the executive proposing ideas, and the non-executive has not been forward-thinking, it's not been collaborative, and it's not stopped certain things that should have not happened in the end. Now, I have obviously been lobbied privately because that's what politicians do. And there's also going to be prospective candidates who are lining up support for signatories, etc. And this is the point that I'd like to make, sir, because we could see the Chief Minister fall, and so would the Council. And we would see a very competent, I would say, Council of Ministers, probably the most progressive Council of Ministers we've seen to date. Deputy Miles, fantastic politician. Deputy Miller, again, very capable lady. And now we're saying, remove them. And I totally disagree with that, sir. I would rather sit around the table and be productive and say, well, look, You know, as an executive, we understand there are 6 new members out of 12. You've maybe had a slow start, but overall, I think they have done a very good job in terms of helping those lower income households, especially in my constituency. You know, increasing the personal income tax threshold to £20,000, that has made a massive, massive difference. And we saw that with the mini budget. You know, everybody was in support of it. And I think maybe there was a lot of momentum behind that mini budget. And the public were expecting this to continue. And of course, you cannot sustain that across time. And so there was maybe this disappointment afterwards across a prolonged period of time. And I think we've seen the government plan in 2022 be approved. I think there's only about 11 members who opposed the government plan. In December, we saw 13 members oppose the government plan, including myself. But what that really suggested to me was the executive had a majority. You had most of the Assembly who were content with the budget. They were. And now we are in this position where it's personalised politics and it's all aimed at the Chief Minister. But really, we need to be looking at the entire Council of Ministers, including the Constable St John and Deputy Tom Binney, because often I've disagreed with the Council, and it was during their time that they served on the Council as well. So it cannot be the case you jump ship and lay blame with everybody else, because that is not a team player. And I know it's probably going to go down not very well, but it's the truth. And now we could find ourselves in this very awkward position where, upon reconstituting the Assembly, who's going to put themselves forward? Because I tell you what, this is the first time it's happened in history. And probably most of the Council of Ministers are going to say, well, you know what, we don't want to be associated with those who had no confidence in us, and they are the most capable in the Assembly. So what is the alternative? Are we going to maybe see a group of independents in coalition with Reform, the hard right of the Assembly, with socialists? Oh, I think the public are really going to love that, aren't they? Because let's face it, nobody is thinking about these things. We're just thinking about the short term. Oh, let's get rid of the Chief Minister. Okay, so who is going to replace her? Are they going to have a collegiate Council of Ministers? Because I doubt it, because this Assembly is broken, it's divided. There are 2 groups here, and you will see that with the outcome of this vote. And for me, I think it's a very, very sad day, because this was something that could have been avoided. And I think there has just been this unfortunate circumstance where people are trying to capitalise on some mistakes that the Council have made, and they're trying to capitalise on the loudest voices, who happen to be the minority, who are often heard on social media. And you hear some politicians saying, oh, well, I'm just going to go the way how my constituents want me to go. But we are the ones who know the internal dynamics. We are the ones who know what the consequences will be. And I can tell you now, there will be consequences upon the reconstitution of the States Assembly, because you're going to be losing the quality that we currently have among our Council of Ministers, and I think you're probably going to have less able politicians, and I'm sorry if I say that, I'm not being offensive, sir, but less capable people who are going to be putting themselves forward as candidates for ministerial roles, and I think they're probably going to be out of their depth. And that is not going to serve the public. I think what we currently have, I think the current team of the Council of Ministers, they have gone through a rough ride, but we have seen the Deputy Assistant Minister for Environment acknowledge that there was differences between herself and the Chief Minister. But she, you know, it's credit to her really that she's made that public statement saying, I will be supporting the Chief Minister. Because that just shows, you know, at that time it was very difficult for her. She was being called all sorts, unfortunately, due to the turmoil that we saw, and it was public. And you know what? She said, well, no, I'm part of the team. The team is important, and it's about how we can build bridges and how we can try and work together to serve the people who voted us into this chamber. And I think that's, you know, a massive credit to Deputy Joan, who, again, is a very, very high calibre individual, a very capable lady. in my view, I always said she should have probably been in one of the most senior roles in our government. And it's unfortunate she's maybe not been given that opportunity, but certainly in the future, she would serve the island very well. And I think we've got many other ministers who I would put in the same bracket as her. And I, to a certain extent, feel a certain degree of sadness for some of my female colleagues, and especially for the Chief Minister, because this is the first female leader that this island has seen. And look what she's having to go through. You know, politics aside, it must be horrible for 2 weeks how the poor Chief Minister has had to go home, and she's, you know, must be so upset, and then she's having to put a brave face on, you know, publicly, because again, she is the front of the government. And it's, in my view, inhumane to a certain extent, what she's had to go through with some of the comments that have been made. And for me, it's been quite sickening. And I'm a very principled person. I know probably most of my constituents would say, well, we want you to vote for the vote of no confidence. However, I am not going to do the dirty work of other politicians who simply want to have a power grab so they can be in the ascendancy and they can be in the executive just to displace a group of competent ministers. Because I think that's precisely what is happening, and that is what I've seen. And I've been lobbied, I know what it's like. You know, people are saying, we need your vote. We know we want the numbers in favour to get rid of the Chief Minister so the Council of Ministers can fall. And I can tell you now, the internal dynamics, it's completely fractured, it's completely broken, and it's been like that for some time. You know, we've probably been the worst assembly for it. Even though on paper we've got a very competent group of individuals, for some reason, it's not gelling. And sir, you know, I'd just like to finish off by also saying that I am disappointed, shall I say, with the Conotop of St. Peter, because I think what it really showed is he didn't really have principles to abide to his team and to stick by the Chief Minister. Now, I get on very well with him, but it is very disappointing just to see him jump ship so late. Really, he should have, you know, done that some time ago, because it's not good to kind of see people, you know, thinking about themselves instead of thinking what he truly thought, that the Chief Minister was capable and she had done a good job, and that's what he expressed to me privately. And now it's different, so he doesn't get slated with all of those who vote cons. So
I think, Deputy, you are coming perilously close to imputing improper motives, directly or by innuendo, to any member of the state.
Well, I apologise for that, sir.
And you will withdraw that?
I will withdraw that comment, sir.
Sir, upon accepting his withdrawal, I feel that he's brought me into disrepute.
Well, I've already brought the Deputy up on it. He has withdrawn it. There's nothing that can be done at this, within the context of this debate. There are steps you may choose to take outside the Assembly, but not within the debate.
Yes, sir, I'll report him to PPC.
Yes. You speaking further, Deputy? Very well. Conotop St Mary.
Thank you, sir. I have to say I'm somewhat surprised at the last speaker's contents, but I do agree with much of what he says, except, of course, for the later comments towards the Deputy Constable Peter. I look beyond this particular vote. If it is successful, then, as various speakers have pointed out, the Council of Ministers falls in, scrutiny panels fall in, and we will be in for a fairly long period of stagnation. And I simply question whether that is in the best interest of Jersey, which is all I'm interested in. I know it upsets some of my constituents who may be even looking down from me from the public gallery, but this is a matter where the states members themselves have to decide on the basis of what they see and how they see the whole mechanism of government operating. So with due apologies to them if I do vote against the motion, that is where I presently stand. And as to the comment about the present Council of Ministers effectively being discarded, I think not. I think that if the vote of no confidence were to succeed, then the cream would rise to the top, if I might say so, sir, and there'll be some ministers there who will put themselves forward, and I would expect a sort of cohesive support for one or more of them in opposition to any others who might stand. So in that situation, I'm not too despondent about us losing the talent of the present ministerial body, but I am concerned, sir, that if the vote were to succeed, it is not in the best interest of the Government of Jersey, and I am therefore inclined to vote against that motion. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Hegarah.
Sir, I have to say that I was made a decision not to speak. However, I cannot sit here and listen to what I've just heard from Deputy Andrews. I'm offended by the fact that one of the people who signed a proposition, let's just highlight the fact, 3 women, not men, but women. I've spent 49 years of my working life fighting for equality for women. Today, and in local media in the recent days, the allegations and the sort of undertones of the fact of people putting forward their own opinions as to why someone might challenge someone, I think is offensive. I've always worked for equality. I've worked in environment, as I said, for 49 years of my working life, from being a very young working individual, fighting to who made the tea and who didn't, and who took the tea towel home. I spent 25 years in a very male-dominated environment. I challenged, I worked with my colleagues, and ironically, sir, I've been to the police station on a couple of occasions recently, and I'm welcomed with open arms. In fact, somebody actually said to me, people come in here and it's like a reunion. I think, sir, and I can honestly say this, I've led teams which have been challenging of all sorts, both men and women. And I think that it is important as an assembly that we have an ability, if we feel there's a need, to bring a vote of no confidence. We did in the last assembly, and that was unsuccessful. And there will always be the same reasons. People will say that if it's successful, that we then end up in a period of dysfunctionality. I can't even say the word, sir, that we are not able to move forward. But the reverse can also be said. It's quite clear from what's been said across the board today that there is issues with our current government. Like it or not, there are issues. I've listened and there's been put forward many things. There's been the facts of achievements of what people have done. And I'll challenge a couple of those, actually, because it says about bringing money forward for the underfunding of the emergency services. Ironically, sir, that underfunding and that reduction in the FTEs for the States of Jersey Police was under the watch in 2011 to 2014 of the current Chief Minister. So, and a number of other things brought by the Council of St Martin, the violence against women and girls. That was the last States Assembly. Please not put forward that as credit for this. Also, from the perspective of the maternity review and updates, I seem to recall, as the chair of the health panel in a recent reiteration, that myself and the health panel, or scrutiny panel, plus Deputy Doublé, brought forward recommendations following our review of maternity services. The Le Canave site was all in train prior to this assembly. So I'm happy, sir, that this government has done certain things, but I'm also very unhappy, and I have been exceptionally unhappy since the day we lost our chief executive. I've never been satisfied with the reasons why they left, and that'll never change, because I don't genuinely believe that what we were told was necessarily the full facts. I was very unhappy to be in an assembly where I actually stood up and supported the chair of the health scrutiny panel, but on the basis that I believed of what I was told. Unfortunately, it transpired that those facts that were produced were factually incorrect. And obviously, we then had the recent findings in relation to that. I was also gobsmacked, sir, to find that all of the Council of Ministers, with the odd exception, abstained from that vote. And I could accept, actually, that Deputy Miles abstained from that vote because the day before, I believed that she was out of the island. So I, sir, get very disgruntled when people suggest that people do certain things, A, because they're not part of the team, or B, because they're a man or they're a woman. We're all here and we're all elected by the people of Jersey to represent them. And I genuinely believe that's what our job is. It doesn't matter which side of the fence that we are on. But we need to actually come together. And I have to support some of the comments made by the Constable of St Martin. Sir, there is much legislation waiting in the wings. We've seen very little or nothing over the last 18 months. We meet one day every 3 weeks. What are we doing? Most of us don't know, sir. We do know what we're doing in our scrutiny panels because we are very busy. I'd have liked to have seen the licensing law. Sir, in my previous life, long time ago in my previous life, in 2008, I was actually working on the licensing law as a community inspector and is still not with us. Does that not worry you, or the other members around this room? It certainly worries me, particularly when before in the government plan, which I did not vote for, the government plan, we tried to reduce the actual duty that was being put on alcohol. And I fully understand the reasons why some in the Assembly would say that there was medical and health reasons as to why it needed to be increased. My concern is that we're never and have never actually bothered to actually look at why people depend on alcohol. And that's where we should be going as opposed to increasing the price. We need to have a good licensing law. Our hospitality industry is struggling, and yet we don't have a licensing law. I also, in recent months, have done the review with other members in relation to work permit holders, and I'm disappointed to see that the legislation in relation to modern-day slavery is pushed back to potentially the end of 2025. That's not good enough for me. And rest assured, sir, whatever happens today, if this government stays in post, I'll be bringing a proposition to make sure that that changes, because I'm not satisfied. And that's all I'll say. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Rose Binet.
Sir, I am supporting the vote of no confidence today, also based on my personal experience over the last 18 months, which has seemingly been very different to other members of government. Over this period, I became increasingly concerned by the Chief Minister's unwavering support of the Health Minister and the lack of progress in tackling some of the fundamental issues. Firstly, I would like to correct a statement made by the Chief Minister earlier today and inform the Assembly that Deputy Wilson has never been an employee of mine, nor of Deputy Tom Binay's, nor an employee of the charity that we founded. In fact, we invited Deputy Wilson to join the charity as a trustee, and prior to the election, I was very supportive of Deputy Wilson. Indeed, I suggested that she stood for election and assisted her wherever possible, as did my brother. However, once Deputy Wilson had achieved her desired position of Health Minister, she became an individual that I no longer recognised. And I was alarmed by her first instruction to me, which was that I was not to speak with either Deputies Barbara Ward or Howell on health matters. In the meetings I attended after becoming an assistant minister, I often found myself to be a lone voice, questioning the information being given. For example, prior to the start of my very first meeting, I was spoken to in a very arrogant and intimidating manner by one officer who went on to make statements during that meeting that I knew to be untrue. And when I asked him to provide evidence to back up his claims, he was unable to do so. My approach did not find favour with either the Health Minister or some of the officers. Needless to say, this was not a good start and my card was marked. Prior to the 2022 government plan, the Health Minister decided to walk out of a meeting after I'd politely explained to her that I would not be supporting her request to remove further money from the Health Insurance Fund, given the information that we had received at a meeting with the Care Models Independent Oversight Board. At that meeting, the Oversight Board explained to us that the Care Model had already spent £44 million out of the Health Insurance Fund. They said that the Care Model programme had not been properly set out, that a way of budgeting took place to justify the use of the HIF, and costs were charged to an overhead code with things going on underneath that could not be accounted for. That the board's role had changed from one of policing to guidance, and that even after coaching and encouraging, the Oversight Board felt they could not do their job because there were no targets, no plans, no objectives, and they informed us that they had finally sent a strong recommendation in writing saying, "Stop, get this under control." I considered this information to be a very serious concern and could not agree to further money being put to a project that had so catastrophically failed. And indeed, it was my understanding that the Chief Minister herself did not support further money being removed from the HIF, but agreed to support the Health Minister, resulting in the Chief Minister getting, in her own words, the government's first bloody nose from the Assembly. At the beginning of last year, I was asked to a meeting by a senior civil servant who inquired why I was not down to attend meetings. Was it through choice? I explained that it was not, and that the Health Minister had demonstrated to me that I was not someone she wanted on her team. A week later, I was asked to meet with the officer that I had encountered at my first meeting. Again, this was not a pleasant experience, but it clearly reinforced the views of those in power that I should be silenced as much as possible. I brought these issues to the attention of the Chief Minister, who unfortunately did nothing. And when attempting to help some individuals who were, in my view, being obstructed by the Health Minister denied me access to their background paperwork, even though I was entitled to see it. I made further efforts to obtain the paperwork, but concluded those efforts were pointless, as there were only two people I could take my concerns to, one of whom was causing the problem in the first instance, and the second who was fully supportive of her. Therefore, the individuals who had asked for assistance are left having to seek expensive legal advice and or an appeal to the Complaints Board, who unfortunately, while they do a very good job, have no power to rectify anything. And to make matters worse, the Chief Minister will shortly be asking us to approve an ombudsman, also powerless, to replace them at a cost of between £400,000 and £1 million, when in my opinion, people's concerns should be addressed in the first instance by those in a position of power and responsibility, and that those in a position of power and responsibility should not be a part of the problem. At the end of February last year, we had a debate initiated by the Health Minister's untruthful letter written to Deputy Southern, the then chair of the Health Scrutiny Panel. Prior to the debate, Deputy Ward approached the Chief Minister to explain that the Health Minister had accused her of doing things that were provably untrue, and were written, in my view, to damage Deputy Ward's reputation and to get her removed from the Health Scrutiny Panel. Surely the Chief Minister should have spoken with the Health Minister and at the very least asked her to withdraw her comments and apologise, and thereby avoid the whole unseemly debate. In the event, she did the equivalent to the biblical Pontius Pilate and washed her hands by abstaining from the vote, along with the majority of the Council of Ministers who had been instructed to do likewise. This does not reflect well on the government, which demonstrated that they were complicit in ignoring the truth, which, as the Commissioner of Standards has said, matters. Later on in the year, Deputy Barbara Ward asked the Health Minister why the positions of the non-executive directors to the Health Board had been advertised when the board was yet to be approved. The Health Minister told the Assembly that it must have been the Cabinet Office who were responsible. I observed the Chief Minister's bewildered look when this was said, and it was right that she felt so because the Health Minister had herself released a video inviting people to apply for the roles. Seemingly there are no repercussions for making this statement either. I did not support the of Professor Matthew Taylor because he was appointed at a huge cost to chair a board that did not exist and had not, as referred to above, even been approved by the Assembly. Also, I was and still am very concerned by the quality of information available to the board because I am unable to understand how you could improve things if your data is unreliable. Constable Jail also had reservations about the appointment, but again in November last year, the Chief Minister supported the Health Minister after she extended Professor Matthew Taylor's contract, leading to the resignation of Constable Jail. Once again, I consider the Chief Minister to have reached the wrong conclusion. On the 12th of December, I received an email from the Health Minister's Secretary informing me of when the Minister would be out of the island over the Christmas period. This was as usual. However, what was to happen when she was out of the island had changed. The email stated that the Health Minister would be available in an emergency, but if not available, the Chief Minister would be contacted. And it went on further to explain, and I quote, "If needs be and appropriate, we will revert to Deputy Rose Binney in line with a published delegation." In fact, that statement was not correct. The public delegation actually delegates all powers and functions conferred upon or vested in the Minister. I hope that Deputy Ferry will agree that on previous occasions when the Health Minister has been out of the island, we've been able to work well together. And I can see no justifiable reason why both the Chief Minister and the Health Minister to have effectively constructively dismissed me from that part of my role. I'm also interested to know that in the event that neither the Health Minister nor the Chief Minister were to have been available, who exactly the we were that would have been deciding if it would have been necessary to take the extreme action to contact me, or if indeed I was appropriate. Surely this is not the way to treat someone who is supposed to be part of the team that the Chief Minister refers to. Furthermore, I believe that it is not in the best interests of Islanders for me to be silenced, and it further disenfranchises the electorate of Grouville and St Martin. Our hierarchical system of government has been made worse by the introduction of the secretive and elitist Cabinet Office, and it is clear that the Chief Minister is not intending to tackle the culture in Broad Street, to address the issues of government by civil service slideshow and the affected stifling of an individual that feels the need to speak up on behalf of those that elected them. Finally, I would like to make it clear that I have at all times had a positive and constructive working relationship with the Director of Mental Health, Andy Ware, for which I would like to thank him.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition, the Connétable St Lawrence?
Sir, I first sat in this chamber on the 5th of December 2005. Having heard today what I have heard, it is the only time that I have felt ashamed to be a member of this Assembly. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on this proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon the Chief Minister to make her speech, which will be followed by the summing up from the proposer. Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank all members and members of the public who have spent such a long time listening to what has been said today. So one of my missions has been to encourage others to stand for election, and so I might agree with the Constable of St Lawrence in acknowledging that today can be seen, I think, only as a low point. A business person said to me last week that if they were assessing the job of Chief Minister as a potential business opportunity, they wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Too many challenges on so many levels, they said. Thankfully, it is actually different to running a business. As I said in my opening speech, it is a huge honour to hold this office. And as I hope members have heard today, we are making progress. I see the role, sir, as at its simplest as being the people in the room. We have the privilege of representing the people who elected us to exercise our judgment and implement the policies, our policies, on their behalf. I also believe that we learn the most from the challenges in life. It seems that this debate is considered something of a public performance review. I thank members for their candour and their feedback. Under the leadership of the former Assistant Chief Minister, we have championed, through his role on the State's Employment Board, we've championed the improved use of performance management within the public service, something that is much needed. So I guess it is only right that I have some kind of process, so why not this one? This debate has enabled us to reflect upon events and to remind ourselves and the island of the progress that we are making. And my husband has even cooked dinner for me, sir. There's always an upside. Clearly, there is room for improvement in terms of engagement, and I accept that. I have to say that although I used to enjoy seeing Deputies Barbara Ward and Howell on a Wednesday lunchtime, I did let those sessions fall away as they were the only States members who attended mostly, and with many calls on my times, I could not justify keeping it up. I would be happy to find alternative sessions that are convenient for members if they would like to be kind enough to suggest some. But we have performed on our brief, investing in our health services, rolling out support for the cost of living challenges in our mini-budget and then our government plans. We have invested in our health service, begun a process of renewing our infrastructure and delivering more homes. The majority of us agree much more than we disagree. But as a representative of one of the island's food banks has suggested, this appears a soap opera, and we should focus on meeting the needs of islanders who are struggling, and I agree. This government remains focused on these issues, as Deputy Ferry set out in his speech. If I may speak directly to Reform Jersey, progress in this area would have been very different, and yes, I would contend we would not have been as far advanced in these matters had there been another Council of Ministers in office through this challenging period. We have started by bringing a mini-budget. We began our term by responding to the cost of living issues, and we will continue to do so. These are challenging economic times, and we are here, sir, to serve the interests of the people. We ended the year with strong support for the government plan, and just after that, we signed off the last of the minutes for the Council of Ministers meetings for the entire year. That was a first against councils that have gone before us. And let's not forget that, as we have promised to be more open and transparent, those minutes now contain a greater level of detail than they previously have. That is transparency and the difference in our approach. At this sitting, amongst other things, we have an issue on the agenda that has sat on the to-do list throughout the whole session of the previous government, the public order legislation. I started that when I was at Home Affairs, and I'm delighted that Deputy Miles is now bringing it to the Assembly. On the 19th of March, we will be asked to consider a solution for same-sex parents so that both of their names can appear on a birth certificate, another issue that has for a long time been unresolved. In the last 2 weeks, the Visitor Economy Strategy was published, the first for 20 years. We've also published our Future Economy Strategy, a wide-ranging vision statement committing us to growing our economy, boosting productivity and driving the island forward. And yes, Deputy Farnham, we have turned around some of the projects of the previous government. That's because the public were unhappy at the last election. They wanted to see us get a grip of projects and offer an alternative that is both affordable and achievable, particularly in the current economic circumstances. One of the issues that we have been tackling is a legacy, thorny issues that have not been dealt with, such as the uncontrolled spending in health, and that is a direct quote from an expert. Having developed a financial recovery plan, we are bringing control and stability so that we can focus on improving service delivery, bringing down waiting times, improving standards for patients, and we are. As a team, we're prepared to tackle those challenges. Of course, as the former Deputy Chief Minister, Deputy Farnham will want to protect his legacy as he was at the heart of that government. I understand that. I ask him to instead consider the facts, the delivery, the vision, and the strategic direction. I said in my opening speech, sir, that I accept it is impossible to please all of the people all of the time. Speeches about personalities and events have been full of contradictions. I'm either too weak or too strong, a terrible leader or someone who has done a good job of leading the island through a crisis. In life, we all seek truth and understanding. Sometimes it is hard to work out where the truth lies, particularly when there is a lot of noise and a complicated storyline. I hear that there is disquiet about the departure of the former chief executive. I referred to that in my opening speech, sir. This is a personnel matter, and I really ask members to consider and respect the wishes of the former chief executive. There is nothing more that I can say. I believe the Constable of St John has referred to his experience of being an observer of that relationship, and I can simply ask the members to understand that it was a professional one. Another big question has been why we have continued to try to work with Deputy Tom Binney. The answer to that, I think, is quite simple. Because we have respect and determination to see through a shared vision for the delivery of a hospital that is both affordable and achievable. Again, an issue upon which we agree. It has been deeply unpleasant, but leadership does not mean that you have to like everyone. There is a job to do, and guiding them to do it. In fact, even professional advice has provided me with conflicting views as to how best to manage that particularly difficult part of the team. On the team, some have referenced the loss of my greatly respected former Assistant Chief Minister. The Constable of St John has very strong views about one issue. As he has set out in his speech, it was a decision of principle, and I respect that, as hard as it is. As I said in my letter to him after receiving his resignation, I do hope that one day we will be able to work together again, because we have worked well together over many years. And I'm very grateful to him for his efforts. I could not deliver his wish within the time frame that he required, and he set out the circumstances around that, and it was a great regret that it was not acceptable to him. Although that deed has now been done, I do worry that it is to the detriment of our health service as they face continuing challenges in their programme of modernisation, and we need people with the experience to help us through this period of modernisation. Yet, there has been a continuing undercurrent of criticism of the Health Minister. Ministers and members have spoken warmly about her many achievements, the facts versus the hearsay, and I will instead, rather than adding to the comments that you've heard today, just simply refer to an article that was published recently in the paper by a retiring medical consultant, one who's not always seen eye to eye with me, it has to be said. He referenced in the article the meddling activities of politicians in health. In their view, there was one person in the Assembly who knew what they're talking about, the Health Minister. A clear endorsement, and one with which I have to agree. What has caused great discomfort amongst officials and ministers has been some of the behaviours that we have experienced through actions of the bringer of this proposition. So I do not wish to dwell on those, and I simply think that we ought to rise above. But I have not seen leadership that I welcome, and if I have not properly reprimanded the deputy for his behaviour, I fully accept that I have failed in my duty to protect other ministers from him. That behaviour has been intimidating. Yes, it does make some people reluctant to meet if they're facing potentially aggressive situations. Such behaviour stymies debate. It prevents people from speaking their mind freely. That is exactly the kind of culture that we're trying to overcome in our health service and sometimes still in our wider community. A modernisation journey, sir, is not an easy one. There are vested interests that will resist it. I just would like to thank everyone who has contacted me to offer their support. There are, sir, many islanders who support our agenda for change. They want a modern and a forward-looking government. This debate has enabled us to describe some of the internal challenges and, yes, the resistance that we've experienced to some of that change. Given the differing accounts that people have heard today, I ask members to consider very carefully the rationale for bringing this proposition, the reliability of it, and most importantly, the impact it will have upon progress and the direction that we are all taking as an island. And I thank you and all of members.
Thank you, Chief Minister. I invite Deputy Tom Binet to sum up.
So I hope that members will bear with me because, like the Constable of St Peter, my handwriting leaves a little to be desired. So I'd like to start by thanking everyone who's taken part in the debate and thank all members for agreeing to stay on late in order to get this wound up in one day, sir. I'd also like to thank members of the public that have been involved on either side by sending messages of support, and I hope I'm allowed to do this, sir. I'd like to thank members in the gallery that have taken the time to come and listen to the debate. Sir, I had prepared a closing speech and I'd taken comprehensive notes from each speaker, but I genuinely feel that it'll serve very little purpose to run through everything again at this stage. I really don't think members need me to interpret the many things that have been said today. So, sir, I'm going to take the rather unusual step of closing the debate by simply focusing upon one small but important point made by Deputy Jeune. If I recall correctly, she stated the following: a vote of no confidence should be taken responsibly with a clear understanding of the consequences. Our primary interest is to serve the interests of the island of Jersey. Well, sir, I can assure members that I'm acutely aware of the consequences of this proposition. And having listened to some of the contributions today, I'll sleep very straight in my bed tonight, knowing that I was absolutely right to bring this proposition. And I have absolutely no doubt that I'm acting in the best interests of the island of Jersey. So, with that, sir, I'll call for the appel. Thank you.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on whether or not to adopt the proposition calling for a vote of no confidence in the Chief Minister. And I ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 27 votes pour, 22 votes contre, no abstentions. Will be silence, please.
Can we have the names both ways, please, sir?
Yes.
Those voting pour, the Connétables of St Brelard, St Peter, St Martin, St John, and online the Connétables of St Saviour, Trinity and Grouville. Deputies Southern, Tadier, Luce, Lahegara, Ward, Alves, Farnham, Mezek, Balash, Coles, Porray, Scott, Curtis, Faltham, Howell, Binet, Kovac and Ward. And and Rose Binet online. Those voting contre, the Connétables of St Helier and St Lawrence and St Clement, Deputies Labby, Dublé, Morale, Ayer, Gardner, Gorst, Moore, Osoph, Orr, Miles, Renouf, Jearn, Miller, Ferry, Curtis, Wilson, Stevenson and Andrews.
Very well. The process that is followed now is that the Assembly will need to meet to appoint a new Chief Minister in early course. Candidates for the role will need to submit their strategic vision for Jersey and indicate their intention to be considered by the role by, I think, 5 p.m. on this Thursday, is it? Sorry? 5 p.m. tomorrow. And the Assembly has to vote within 7 clear working days, which will be Wednesday of next week. Wednesday? Sorry, I beg your pardon, Thursday of next week, Thursday the 25th. So that's what the rules provide. And so the anyone who wishes to put themselves forward will need to make a statement by close of business tomorrow. And then it will be voted upon next week. The successful candidate who will be subject to the vote will become the Chief Minister designate. The Assembly will then have to hold a separate meeting 2 days after to appoint ministers, and at that point the Council of Ministers will be confirmed. Public business scheduled for debate on the 16th of February will be postponed until further notice. A new Chief Minister and Council of Ministers have the right to postpone upcoming items of public business for debate. Sorry? I beg your pardon. But that's not what we're talking about, the 16th. That's what it is. I beg your pardon, the 6th of February, not the 16th of February, but because the new council of ministers have the right to postpone, but of course the business currently on the order paper continues. Now, the next item on the order paper, or at least what it might be the next item on the order paper, the Assembly needs to consider whether they're prepared to allow it to be debated, notwithstanding the fact that the appropriate lodging period has not been adhered to, and that's Deputy Scott's proposition relating to the ability of people to vote remotely in the voting next week. I'm not suggesting that members would wish to consider that now, but that should be taken as the first item of business tomorrow morning, namely whether or not you'll have to ask Deputy Scott for members to agree to take your proposition, and if they agree, then that will be the first item of business, because that deals with how people can vote the following week.
Thank you.
Thereafter, business will continue as per the order paper.
So can I ask a question, sir, please?
Yes, of course.
I had understood that in this eventuality we could agree about still hearing some of the existing business.
So the existing business continues.
Oh, we've got.
It's the business on the 6th of February that doesn't continue, because by then there will be a new council of ministers, and then there'll be new decisions. But at matters presently stand.
Can I move the agenda?
Any other questions?
So I do have a possible proposition to formulate, sir. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, notwithstanding the fact that I know the current government stands until the new election. It's clear that the Assembly no longer has confidence in this government. I'm uneasy, therefore, about government business staying on the order paper during this next sitting, this current sitting, when it doesn't have a mandate to bring it forward, at least in de facto mandate.
Well, can I suggest, Deputy, that that's not a matter that should be dealt with at this stage? We're going to come back tomorrow anyway, because Deputy Scott has a matter that needs to be dealt with, and therefore you may wish, if you can formulate such a proposition, to bring it tomorrow.
I was going to ask whether the Assembly has any appetite to adjourn until the 6th of February and make a proposition, sir. But I don't think there's a general appetite for that, so I won't make...
I'm certainly not getting any kind of mood of the Assembly that would be acceptable.
Can I move the adjournment, sir, please?
The adjournment is proposed. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.